the playgrounds of the late 1980s UK. Bad haircuts, rampant homophobia, kids drinking Top Deck or Panda Shandy because that 0.5% alcohol made you feel edgy and tough like Don Johnson in Miami Vice or Boone. However, they were also a battleground. For some, it was Liverpool versus Manchester United. For some, it was the fact that that kid over there had ankle swingers. For some, it was what trainers were better. And for some of us, and yes, I'm in this camp, the camp of the deodorant wash and Red Dwarf quotes, it was which was better, the Commodore 64 or the ZX Spectrum. And it was a battleground fought from Falkirk to Folkestone, from Devon to Dumfries, as we're about to prove. Anthony of Raven Gaming, from the frozen wastes of the north, fought in such battles. And he's ready to engage hostilities once again, with my good self in the subtropical heat of, West Kent. He's lofting high the colours of the Commodore 64, whereas I am, of course, going to be the standard bearer of the ZX Spectrum. Say hi, Anthony.
Thank you, Jay, for that wonderful introduction. Yes, it's me, it's Anthony from Raven Gaming, and my duty on YouTube is, apart from playing crap at the RetroTech 120 Arcade Challenge, go and check out the Facebook group, it's really good. It is to put content up about the Commodore 64 and Amiga. So, without further ado, let's crack on with the video.
And today we will be stoking the fires of a long dead war using the medium of coin-op conversions, a good measuring stick of a machine's quality by anyone's standard. He has 3 conversions of a high standard to show me from the vast library of the 8-bit Commodore, with a regrettably poor Spectrum version to match, and I'll be making sure that Commodore owners don't like it up 'em with a similar selection for the ZX Spectrum. And don't you worry, Amstrad owners, if you're feeling left out, you've still got the only game version of that TV show Dempsey and Makepeace. So, Mr. Raven Gaming, show us what the beige and blue beast has to show for itself with your first entry.
Bobble. It's the arcade equivalent of Morgan Freeman's voice, isn't it? Everyone enjoys it and it's completely inoffensive. Just check out any retro game YouTuber's top 50 or so best arcade games and you'll find this classic is nearly always in the top 10. It helped Taito become a household name outside Japan overnight and gave them their new company mascots. It probably helped them that the vast majority of us European gamers hadn't even sniffed Super Mario Bros. At the time, and the fact that a cab of this game was in pretty much every arcade around back in the late 80s helped. It made such an impression on me that a few years ago I had a Bubble Dragon tattoo done. The home micro ports were released in 1987 by Firebird, a software subsidiary of British Telecom. As a Commodore 64 owner back then, I was so happy that US Gold and Ocean missed out. This magnificent port just smacks of care and attention. It's little wonder why this always ends up in the #1 spot of all time Commodore 64 coin-op ports. The graphics, though a little chunky, and the main sprites are all wonderfully drawn and animated. The SID rendition of the theme tune is even better than the coin-ops. Honestly, when I say this port is like having the arcade game at home, it's no exaggeration. Nothing is cut from the C64 port. Presentation is spot on too, with touches like Bubby floating down to the next round kept intact. If I had to have a gripe, maybe the power-ups are a bit random, but that is honestly the only complaint about this gem. Zap64 were also impressed with Julian Rignall calling it a licensing triumph that shouldn't be missed at any cost and giving the game 97% and a gold medal award. High praise indeed. I know Bobble is a good enough game on pretty much every system, I hear you all cry, and you will be mostly correct apart from the Amstrad port, which was nothing short of a disgrace. The bubble blowing antics are fine on the Spectrum, but definitely not a patch on a fantastic Commodore version. The rendition of the theme tune is pleasing enough, but presentation is lacking somewhat, with the intro screen, bonus hidden rooms and will be floating to next room all absent. The visuals look extremely rushed. The spec is capable of some cracking sprite work and could definitely do better than this. Poor Bobby looks like he's had a stroke. Plus, a splash of green and cyan for the main characters wouldn't have gone amiss. The biggest issue with the spec port is missing the last 20 rooms. Yep, this port is down to 80 screens from 100. I tells you, if this port was being produced today by EA, they'd likely sell the missing screens DLC for tenner. Crash, however, gave the game a slightly overrated 90% and a Crash Smash award, citing it as the most playable arcade conversion this year.
Ooh yeah, a damaging blow to the Spectrum there. I'm starting to regret my choices from the Argos catalogue in 1985. Well, look here, sir. Here is my first offering. None other than Super Hang-On. Super Hang-On was a cabinet you just had to play. You could cast your leg over the plastic beast and bank left and right to steer your motorbike across a variety of world locales. It was a Yu Suzuki classic with an Outrun-style selectable soundtrack of comparable legendary standards. Yet it's perhaps not as fondly remembered as its Ferrari featuring stablemate. However, it is just as thrilling. It was Electric Dreams that released the home versions of the motorbike classic, of which there were many. Monarch Development handled the Commodore 64 version, and well, here it is. I mean, listen to it. The Commodore 64 is well known for being the best sounding of the 8-bit micros. But in this instance, to say it's a bit of a din, well, that might be an understatement. The SID chip is struggling with the mixture of engine and music sounds for sure. Graphically, it's turgid, with the perspective of the opposing motorbike sometimes appearing much larger in the distance than your own poorly rendered two-wheeler in the foreground. And worst of all, the sense of speed is dreadful. It was so bad Zap64 didn't even review it, and according to issue 11 of the Games Machine magazine, it was removed from sale very early after its release due to quality reasons. Ooh heck! The Spectrum version, coded by Chris Wood, was pretty darn good though. The graphics are bold and colourful during a time when they could easily have looked monochrome and as sickly grey as well some of the Commodore 64 version. It's swift too, with all the hillocks and curves of the original. The challenge of the first game is intact, and all round it's a decent conversion. There's neat touches everywhere. There's a setting on the title screen to alter the sensitivity of the motorbike. Your Sinclair declared it an engine-growling motorcycle race game with all the playability of the original. An 8 out of 10 from them. And an 85% from Crash, who called it a superb and challenging coin-op conversion. So yeah, that's a win for the Spectrum. Take that, Jack Trammell. Over to you, Anthony.
Also in 1986, the same year as Bobble, Taito decided to give ancient even by mid-80s standards Breakout a fresh coat of paint. There is 32 differently designed levels that include bricks that must be hit twice, indestructible bricks, and random alien enemies that are just various shapes that have a habit of getting in the way. If your ball hits one of these annoyances, then it either speeds your ball up or pings it past your bat, costing you a life. Fortunately, power-ups are released at random from the destroyed bricks that grant different effects, such as extending your bat, duplicating the ball, and a laser turret on your bat so you can blast both the bricks and those aliens. I picked this game for the RetroTech 120p arcade challenge and won, because I used the mouse and everybody decides to be silly and use joypad. So, with an arcade game with such an outdated premise, Ocean's ports on their Imagine label should be near arcade perfect on all systems. By 1987, the breakout genre was 10 years old. This C64 port is as faithful a port as Bobble was. Visually, apart from the display ratio being off, it's a near perfect conversion. The sound is nicely done, with the effects sounding quite authentic. Presentation is fantastic also, with a wide selection of control schemes available to the player. The best control option is the paddle. I used to play this port with a pair of Atari 2600 paddles plugged into 64. And let me tell you something, brother! Sorry for the Hulk Hogan impression. It's the only way to play. Superb stuff. Julian Rignall agreed, stating, "This is a magnificent conversion, faithfully capturing the look, atmosphere and sound of the coin-op." The Zap 64 crew awarded it a whopping 80%. The Spectrum port is, well, bland. That's the best way to put it. If the C64 port was a Fox's Crunch Cream or British Chocolate Hobnob, a breakoutery goodness, then the Specky port is a rich tea or malted milk of the two ports. The rendition of the opening theme is okay, but the in-game effects result in nothing more than the odd beeping and farting effect. Visually, it's a mixed bag. The shadows on the bricks are still evident, and the aliens are nicely drawn. The bat, however, looks nothing like its arcade counterpart, and the backgrounds are as plain as Katie Price without her makeup. Presentation is a bit crap too, with no mouse and paddle option. Surely, the late Sir Clive Sinclair, God bless his soul, could have invented a Spectrum mouse. Crash was just as displeased with the feeble port, with one reviewer stating that Arkanoid contains no addictive qualities at all, and that Through the Wall that came free with the Specky is more fun to play than this. Ouch! It was awarded a bang average 59%. I take it bashing your head against a brick wall is more fun to play than this port then.
Oh, good lord. I feel like filling my Spectrum up with milk and hurling it into a reservoir. Bombjack! Save me from such insolence. It's the time for Tekken Limited to do their thing. Bombjack stars, Jack, a rather squat and fat superhero who must fly around various landmarks, saving them from birds and various terrifying robot creatures with menacing red eyes. This game has always freaked me out just for that. A simple game in design, very much in the same mould of addictive single-screen platforms like Bobble and Burger Time, Bombjack is an addictive gem. The Commodore 64 version, released along with the other formats by Elite, is not so good. Compare the size of the sprites in the arcade here versus the Commodore 64 version. He is way too big, that Jack fella. Not just him, but also the villains. While it looks okay, it completely changes the dynamic of the game. It makes the tricky game far more difficult. With this one stylistic choice, it fails at its one basic function, to be a conversion of how a popular arcade machine plays. While Commodore user liked it, giving it an 80 and saying they were glued to it over a bank holiday, Zap laid down the hard truth bombs by saying, after the excellent Spectrum version, this is an immense disappointment. I'm sure the conversion could have been done far, far better than this. Have a 47%, say Zap. And now let's see if what they say about the Spectrum version is true. Graphically, it's not great, I have to say. Sometimes it's a bit tricky to see your characters, bombs and villains, with the little black characters that represent them. But, it's about as big as an obese rhino. It plays superbly. And also look, the graphics are proportionately correct to the arcade. Not only does it play fantastically, with Jack moving around as smoothly as his more colourful arcade counterpart, it's also actually more like the arcade game than the Commodore 64 one, which is the bare minimum we can ask for. And not only that, it moves at a fine old whack as well. Bombjack on the Spectrum isn't just in the list of an arcade conversion that's markedly better than its Commodore 64 counterpart. It also so happens to be one of the Spectrum's better games, full stop, a contender for anyone's Spectrum Top 100. Crash magazine gave it a 92% in their April 86 edition, saying, "If you want a truly superlative arcade game which offers unbelievable addiction, then go out and buy it now." Your Sinclair were also full of praise. "There you have it," say they, "a simple idea that's 100% addictive." I questioned my love of the Spectrum once again, and I've once again had a change of heart. This time thanks to my dear friend Bombjack. "Take me back, Sir Clive, I've changed. I just want to see my kids Kempston and Death Race 2000 again. Nothing can separate us now, Raven Gaming. My 128k and I are just as strong as iron in our devotion. Just show me what you've got. I'm sure it will affect me not one bit."
Good old Donkey Kong. One of the most important games in history. Released by Nintendo in 1981, it saved from bankruptcy, made Shigeru Miyamoto a household legend, and it showed Billy Mitchell up for the dirty cheat that he is. This game was 5 years late being ported to the 8-bit home micros, so you'd expect quality ports across the board. First thing that's noticeable about the Spectrum port is the horrendous visuals. Donkey Kong looks like a Yeti and Pauline is a stick figure. And these colour clashes have been kept to bare minimum. Mario is nicely drawn, yet moves like he's desperate for poo. And when he reaches the ladder, he suddenly develops crippling arthritis and climbs the ladder as well as Oscar Pistorius would. You can also see his bum as he climbs ladders. The main problem with this port is Mario's jump. It's barely enough to clear barrels or fireballs, so it has to be timed perfectly. One slip up with the jump and you're done for. The difficulty level is far too high from the off as well, so it's not much fun at all, I'm afraid. At least all 4 screens from the arcade original are present, but the unfair difficulty and bland visuals ruin the entire game for me. Crash gave this poor port a measly 48% in issues 37, with the main gripe once again being the £9 asking price for conversion of an ancient coin-op. The C64 port looks and sounds exactly how it should. It's clear that Ocean have taken their time with this port to get the presentation spot on. Even the chunky visuals do nothing to detract from the actual arcade feel of this effort. Even Kong grabbing Pauline looks 100% authentic. The difficulty level is actually balanced, ensuring that when you die, it's your fault for being rubbish. It's pretty much an arcade perfect port of Donkey Kong on your Commodore 64. Billy Mitchell would probably still try to cheat though. He can shove his hot sauce up his arse. Zap64 rewarded this port an above average 60%, stating that whilst it's a very accurate conversion, £9 is too much for a conversion of a 5-year-old arcade game. Miserable buggers. I don't know. The C64 is a great port, and all Zap do is moan about it.
Oh my word, once again I'm lusting after the brown, pink and baby blue of those Commodore graphics, and I'm considering stuffing a load of artisanal fudge into the joystick port of my hopeless black rectangle and sticking the useless beast in a wasp's nest to get it all stung to all hell. What have I got left in the tank? I'm defeated. No! Wait! Chase HQ! The classic cops and robbers chase game by Taito was a huge hit in 1988, a speech sample-filled chaotic catch-em-up which had you launching your police-issue black sports car into the back of various wrong-uns until they stopped. A great idea, often replicated in more modern games like GTA, Hot Shot Racing and Need for Speed, Chase HQ is a genre definer. It was Ocean who put out the various versions, and well, they had to put out a few all at once. Maybe that's the excuse they used for why they had got the work experience person and the cleaner to do the Commodore 64 version. It's rough, and the Commodore 64 can do way better than this. It's a weird looking game. The sprites look suitably Commodore 64, but the backgrounds, well, they look incredibly drab. I would say they look like the Spectrum version, but that's doing the Spectrum version an enormous disservice. Sense of speed, much like the conversion of Super Hang-On, is low. The very basics you need to do when you make a racing game is get the sense of speed correct. There are details also missing from the other versions of the game, such as the helicopter that flies overhead on certain levels. It's jerky and just lacks the thrill factor of some of the better versions and its arcade parent. Commodore Format and Your Commodore gave it a 80 and a 75 respectively, but these publications were definite outliers. Those scores must have been exchanged for several brown envelopes, because you know what? Magazines need brown envelopes. There might not have been any money in them, but there were brown envelopes for sure. Zap gave it a 53% though, and hailed it as an anticlimactic release. C&VG said that poor is a polite term to describe the terribly sluggish pace of the gameplay, and they plopped a 36% down on its chest. The Games Machine gave it a 20% and bemoaned that this version shows just how bad conversions can be. Now onto the Spectrum. Oh my word, what a knockout blow we have here. It is a conversion that regularly features in the top end of the top 10 lists of most Spectrum owners. It's very rare that I can praise a Spectrum game for its sound, especially over a Commodore 64 version. But on the 128K version there are speech samples, there are sirens, there are sound differences when you enter tunnels, a neat trick that, and there's even a great tune on the title screen too. The graphics are crisp, smooth and swift, and are tremendous representations of the original. Gameplay too is glorious. It's as playable as the original. It's crisp in its control with a tremendous sense of speed. Spectrum Chase HQ is, make no mistake about it, everything that the Commodore 64 version isn't. A 97% score from C&VG, with the accolades coming thick and fast for the Spectrum one. They say if you miss it, you should be locked up. Crash said from start to final arrest, Chase HQ is rip-roaring, turbocharged action all the way. They gave it a 95%. Your Sinclair says that you're looking at a certain number one, which I believe they were correct about, no question, and they gave it a 94 and said it's a bloomin' miracle. It's a blinking marvel is what it is. So, after all this, what answers do I have? Which is the best hardware based on the games we've seen? It's the arcade. Of course it is. The arcade versions are always better. Always. Except the Spectrum version of Renegade. Raven Gaming, what do you think?
Hope you've all enjoyed mine and Jay's jaunt down memory lane. Safe to say that this Spectrum vs Commodore 64 war would not have been made possible if it wasn't for the brilliance of Sir Clive Sinclair himself. So rest in peace, good sir, and for the rest of you out there, thanks for watching and goodbye.
So thanks to Anthony. Please go and visit that man's channel. I declare an end to these wars. Again. K, thanks. Bye.